Hello, and welcome to the online module on topic tailored sharing. Today I'll tell you more about different types of topics and how you can best adapt your team building and committee work, and in general your work as a chairperson, to a specific type of topic to take most out of chairing this specific type of topic. In general, topic-oriented chairing can facilitate your work as a chairperson in many different ways. The fundamental idea is that the type of topic you have will determine which types of questions delegates must answer to tackle it, and which discussion processes can best resolve issues included in the topic. Often, preparing to chair a topic begins with doing research on its thematic content, which will be the policy case. Looking at the topic types supports you in analyzing the topic's fundamental questions and challenges. Knowing the type of the topic can help to structure your research, select preparatory tasks for the committee, and most importantly, allow you to prepare and have tools at hand for those challenges that can occur. In addition, better understanding the type of the topic and the question it asks, and identifying these in a complete way, makes sure you draft a resolution that is complete and matches the expectations of the topic. During team building, why it's important to know what type of topic you have, because team building is a training ground for the committee work, and this connection can be used more extensively by selecting games or challenges for the committee during team building, which they might face in a similar form during committee work. If delegates have to be creative during committee work, or they have to resolve some moral dilemma or choose a stance, this will make team building a better training ground for committee work and will give you material and lessons learned to point out when keeping the committee on track. Next to selecting team building activities that prepare delegates for the specific challenges of committee work, understanding the type of the topic you have can also help in selecting methods best suited to tackle the topic. It will make it easier to identify key questions for the committee work, to decide where a discussion is worth pursuing in more depth, and to estimate a realistic schedule accordingly. In general, there are three types of topics that are defined in EYP, which are creative, conflict, and strategic topics, and right now we'll talk about those a bit more in depth. So, talking about the creative topics, those are usually about new ideas, uncharted territory, and innovative solutions. What I mean by that is that creative topics require coming up with new innovative solutions, usually to a long-existing problem or new emerging field. Within these topics, the aim can easily be agreed upon and is not very controversial. Instead, the challenge lies in coming up with an approach that has not been taken before, or that will reach a greater effectiveness than previous approaches. A committee topic example would be: how should Europe's Youth on the Move initiative be accessible to all young Europeans? Talking about challenges of the creative topics, we can say that chairing a creative topic is challenging but equally inspiring. The issues handled may vary from long-lasting problems that are already overworked to possible uncharted territory with insufficient research or experimentation on the field. Then the difficulty lies on the process of discovering and experimenting with different and innovative solutions and ideas that could still be efficient and implementable. The chair has also needs to be the voice of the reason, so that the creativity is not imposed for the sake of it, but rather encourage the delegates to be critical on their proposals and assess their feasibility. Furthermore, the chairperson should foster a creative atmosphere all throughout the chairing process and adapt the basic team building stages and committee work structures to cater its committee needs. Talking about best practices for chairing creative topics, we can say that the key with this kind of topics is to start enabling a creative mindset from scratch. Even on the first contact with the delegates, while trying to maintain this inspiring atmosphere all throughout the session. Before the session, you have to ensure a solid academic preparation from the side of the delegates and from the side of yourself, so that you could see clearly the greater picture and its different aspects. As far as the pre-session tasks are concerned, it would be preferable to induce their creativity within the process as well. For instance, you can ask them for creative visualization of the topic, creating mind maps, drawings, poems, songs, stories. You can ask them to prepare a sort of a presentation on a specific aspect, either individually or in groups. Have some variety on the requested tasks and include different viewpoints or alternative paths to tackle the raised problem. You can also inspire your delegates yourself by sending them a TED Talk or innovative projects and ideas that other people have tried or are currently working upon. Taken that creativity is all about making new connections to already existing elements, it would be a nice idea to create some kind of narration or plot that ties all the session element modules together, installs cohesion and meaningfulness to the process, and puts it in a different perspective. As far as team building is concerned, it would be nice to adapt your strategy in a way that includes your topic or its key elements in different activities. Creating such connections from an early stage helps setting the right mindset for the delegates and ensuring a smoother transition to the committee work phase. Moreover, during team building, you can begin training the creativity by choosing games that give them space to innovate, choose their own working strategy, and requires thinking spontaneously or out of the box to succeed their goal. You could even let them create a new game from scratch, given specific tools and materials. All these mind-triggering activities will help them to practice finding connections in seemingly unrelated things, dealing with complex issues whose solutions aren't evident, and will prepare them overall for the creative thinking of the topic later on. However, you also need to build upon the trust of the committee so that everyone feels comfortable in sharing his thoughts and ideas without the fear of being judged or rejected. The relaxed atmosphere of trust and understanding should be also maintained throughout the committee work. It is very crucial that there is an ambience of positivity within the committee room where every delegate feels encouraged to contribute with innovative ideas and whose thoughts and views are always welcome. Now it's also the time to create an inspiring workspace to introduce their creativity using pillows, blankets, drawings, different personal objects, music, vision boards, and generally whatever you think could trigger the imagination and the productivity of the delegates in a positive way. The problem with sharing this kind of topics would be time, taken that creativity usually requires a lot of time, and if delegates start innovating, it's really difficult to stop them and to keep the ideas in a very reasonable field and an implementable field. That's why you need to be quite an active chairperson, carefully listening to their discussions and cutting those whenever necessary. The aim of chairing creative topics is all about finding innovative solutions. Moving on to the conflict topics, I can say that chairing a conflict topic is both quite challenging and rewarding process. One of the distinct features of this type is that the challenges are not grouped at a particular stage of chairing a given topic, but are scattered around its entire duration. A problem that could be identified at an earlier stage is time complications and planning. A discussion that requires aligning towards the side of two distinct values might last much longer than one would initially plan. The problem that you could also encounter is delegates deviating from the topic and actually starting discussions on unrelated issues. Delegates will often find a hard time finding compromise, and also it's really difficult to grasp the full scope of the conflict and take both sides of the conflict into account. Usually you will also encounter the fact that too dynamic approach to chairing a conflict topic leads to losing ideas. That's why the chairing conflict topic is rather a business chairing idea, where your delegates are not just running around doing stupid stuff as in creative topics, but are rather reasonable and try to back up their opinions with different solid facts and solid ideas. When working on the on the conflict topic, try to read as many materials on the topic as possible and gain comprehensive factual knowledge to pass it on to your delegates later on. Prepare a topic mind map for yourself on different questions that the committee will have to ask, and make sure that you have considered a range of potential answers. Also, outline the different paths that the committee can take, forming them in a flip chart or issue tree to already for yourself have an idea of the options and discussions the committee can take, and be ready for a process which could and be ready to start a process which could help to settle these discussions and help them to choose the best option. It is advisable to include both sides of the argument in the topic overview and let the delegates see the entire scope of the topic. As a pre-session task, one could ask the delegates to reflect over their personal stance and share it before the rest of the delegates. Another thing that delegates could do is to find several non-EY peers and discuss the topic with them, which will help them to discuss the topic in a non-formal environment and therefore form their stance in another way. What you need to do is to make sure that your delegates that your delegates are comfortable with expressing their opinions, and that they have a common agreed position, whichever they choose, which is completely understood by the entire committee. If it's not done, you risk a fundamental disagreement later in the committee work, which might undermine the entire progress. Also, create and emphasize a friendly and supportive environment where the delegates understand that they can leave arguments in the committee room. Make sure that you as a chair are active in listening to everything that your delegates are saying, and you can interfere at any particular point to help them out with factual information or resettling their discussion. Talking about team building, you need to adapt your team building to force the committee to reveal personal stance and then make them compromise and come up with a collective stance. Try to show the inefficiency in arguing, maybe through conflict or discussion games. Be prepared to spend more time than you usually would on getting to know each other games and icebreakers, because it will make delegates more friendly to each other, and it's much more difficult to disagree with the person you know and like than with the person that you dislike. And it also might help to intentionally fail your delegates in a game where they can't reach an argument. Also, don't be afraid to include this element into your debriefings, especially if you encounter a conflict situation. You could discuss with your delegates what you would potentially do during committee work in case they can't reach a common ground on the topic. In conflict topics, committee work is arguably the most essential aspect of chairing. Leading such a topic will demand a considerable amount of business-style chairing. Don't be afraid of it. You should be delegates' guide through the whole process and lead them while staying objective and not patronizing. A good idea would be using small groups, because they allow everyone more discussion time and a time-efficient way to consolidate all the viewpoints. You also need to keep into account that you will always need more time for discussions that you think. Be prepared to give people longer or more frequent breaks to cool down after heated discussion. Give them time to establish a common stance and ensure that everyone fully understands the scope and implications. Do not move on until you're confident that this has been achieved. It is likely that the resolution will be the product of significant amount of compromise, so do not be surprised if some of the clauses are not particularly detailed or do not appear to take a particularly definite stance. So in general, the idea about the conflict topics would be choosing the stance, tackling the issue, and delivering a comprehensive resolution covering one particular stance on the topic. Moving on to strategic topics. Strategic topics are the topics that lead towards a relatively clear and uncontested end goal. The question that is to be tackled during committee work is how to reach this end goal. These kind of topics demand looking at the bigger picture as well as a long-term approach. Different pathways to achieve the end goal can be identified. The debate in committee work focused mostly on which path is the most effective or preferred one. It is often the case that some solutions to the problem exist already and are potentially even implemented to some extent. What is missing and what the committee is asked to develop is a strategy or a coherent approach to tie the policy framework together and ensure that different actions do not contradict each other. It is essential for strategic topics to consider different time horizons, as the challenge also lies in interlinking solutions on different time horizons to ensure coherence. The committee is asked to come up with a process that allows effective implementation. Strategic topics often require knowledge about many different stakeholders with complex relations and interests. Strategic topics are very complex and are composed of several sub-issues whose interlinkages are not always obvious and sometimes are hard to identify. It is important to come up with a complete solution because missing out on certain aspects of the topic might negatively affect solutions for other aspects of time horizons of the topic. Therefore, it becomes essential to have a good understanding and overview of different time horizons and the implications of actions on different time horizons. What proved to be a good approach to finding solutions to strategic topics is identifying different time horizons and their objectives, needs, and urgencies. For that, the whole committee must be very clear on the end goal, which then opens up the possibility to think purpose-oriented. A good way to start, therefore, is identifying different strategy paths that could accomplish the end goals and choosing one of them before going into detail on each time horizon. In order to make sure that none of the solutions contradict, it is important to verify the impact of proposed solutions on other aspects of the topic or other time horizons. An easy approach to map out the complex interconnections between the stakeholders in the topic is to create a map showing their interests and connections. A visualization of the stakeholders and the committee will help in the committee work and will help the committee to have a good overview of the topic. In addition to that, the chairperson should make sure to provide the committee with a strong framework. As for delegates' preparation, it's essential for the chairperson to be on top of the academic knowledge concerning different time horizons and stakeholders. Therefore, it's important to know the different measures that are already in place and to understand how they relate to each other, as well as to have a clear view on the framework in which new measures would fit or what measures would have to be included. A good way to start your committee work would be explicitly identify the end goals and to make sure that the entire committee understands the purpose. Then identifying different time horizons on which action is required to achieve these end goals should be discussed. A method to do this is also to come up with a vision for the topic and then to identify different time horizons on which actions need to be happen in order to make the vision a reality. For strategic topics, there are often alternative paths to achieve the end goals. Good practice is to have the delegates identify these different paths and weigh out their effectiveness to achieve the previously identified objectives. It is also important for the delegates to find out why existing measures are not working and what are the challenges to combine existing and new measures. All brainstorming and grouping activities can be structured according to the committee's vision, timeline, or the different time horizons. So the idea is that in strategic topics, the delegates need to build on the existing framework, come up with the common vision, ensure the common level of knowledge. And a good idea for strategic topics would be categorizing your ICs into specific fields. A negative point would be that delegates might easily deviate from the vision that they came up with at the beginning. Also, a bad idea would be coming up with something new, taking that there are already plenty of measures, and the main aim of the topic is to clean up between all these measures and legislation that already exists and clarify what should happen next and when it should happen in order to solve the issue. In general, I would say that topic tailored sharing is a really cool thing. I didn't understand the benefits of it before I actually tried it for the first time. But from my experience, if you start adapting your team building and start setting this mindset of your delegates and creating the proper mood of your delegates during team building already, it helps a lot during committee work. Committee work goes much smoother, much faster, and it's much easier to work with the delegates during committee work if they already have the mood that is necessary for discussing a particular topic. If you have any questions, drop me a line. Good luck, and I hope that you will manage to topic tailor your chairing for the session.